Hello, everyone. Hi, friends. Hi, dear good friends. No worries, no worries. Melody, take your time. Excited that we're here today. Finally, I think this has been on and within my heart for a very long time, and so I'm excited to finally get to introduce this. There's gonna be a couple more people maybe joining, and then there's also some people in the replay, and so I just wanted to give a warm welcome to everyone here. And yeah, I think this has been a book that's for a lot of us is really, really deep in our hearts, or sometimes we have like this like inkling or like curiosity to read it, and it's one of those like chunky books, right? I mean it's for like a couple of like weeks at least, or a month, or I don't know. I'm a kind of a slow reader because I like to like annotate everything, and so I think for a lot of us who have this book in store, it's kind of like the women who run with the wolves, where we have it, and then we kind of come back to it and stuff, and so I wanted to put this out here and see if this wanted to be a community study for yeah, for indigenous wisdoms, scientific knowledge, the teaching of plants. And yeah, this book is very, very dear to my heart. And I know it's very dear to like a lot of people's hearts as well. And so yeah, I'm excited to really spend some time today and talking a little bit about the foundations of what we're going to be going into for 6 months. And we'll introduce some themes, and that will like accompany us in this journey as well. But I find it really interesting that today, in the Mayan calendar, we're in Oxlajucanil, for those of us who live within the system of the Mayan calendar called Tzolkin, or the Cholquij. Oxlajucanil is, it's a final day of this Trecena of Achmak, of the bees, of pardoning, of honey, of working little by little constantly, and you know there's a teaching around forgiveness here, but there's also a teaching around like this act of being in constant relationship with something until it flowers, until it blooms. And so I think today, in this culmination of, it feels very aligned with this study, because some things take a lot of time to mature, and I think they ask for patience and this like constant tending to, almost like tending a garden, before we get to really see the flowers and eventually the fruits of what we've been caring for. Honey is really expensive for bees. And so I think, there's no coincidences here, but I think braiding sweetgrass, since it's kind of in the field, at least for me and for passages, it's something very similar. I think it's asking to like tend to our living relationship with plants, our the knowledge of the place that we're in, and the living worlds that we are also a part of the ecosystem that we're living within. And so I think it brings like this like indigenous knowledge, and scientific knowledge as well, in a conversation where it's, for me, this book asks us to pay attention to like the relationships, through which the scientific inquiry is formed. And so it's a beautiful day to gather, and begin tending to some of these questions and the quest, right? And so I'm excited to be here with you all. And And just a warm welcome to each and every one of you. Um, so I think, we have a couple new faces here, and it's a short, I mean, it's a small group. Milpa, she found a bug. Um, it's a small group, so I think we can go ahead and maybe open up our mics and just introduce one another and maybe what brings us here, like what is it that this book is calling you to read it in community. So I'm gonna mute myself and I don't know what to pass, but we'll pass it. I don't know what to pass yet. Pass the grass. Yes, I passed the grass. The sweet grass.
Hi everyone. Hello Mariana. So lovely to see you. I was not planning to be here, to be honest, and I opened my emails and I was gonna watch the replay of another masterclass and I saw see you in 10 minutes. I was like, oh, I guess I'm joining live. And I'm so happy to see you. And Braiding Sweetgrass, it's kind of like when we read Women Who Run with the Wolves last year. I've opened this book so many times and I've read like a chapter every time and I just never got to the end of it. And I just love it. And as you said, every time I read one chapter, I just want to savor it and integrate it. And there's just so much in each page. And I'd love to get to the end of this book.
I can go. I'm Gabrielle. Hello, everyone. I am here for a lot of reasons. Well, one reason is that I've actually already read the full book, but I read it by myself, with like some conversation with my friends and family about things I was reading, but not with like, but I'm really interested in like the structured dialogue piece and like being able to learn from other people who are as interested and as knowledgeable about this work as I can find. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't think there's that much more. I'm hoping to be able to join for the whole reading. Yes, I will also pass the sweetgrass.
Hi everyone. I yeah, I absolutely love this book. I just started rereading it a few weeks ago, and just because it's the first time I'm also blessed to have a gardener that it's time to like it's the first time that I'm being asked to steward a land, a little land. And it just felt like the book calling me back. Um, I really love Robin and the author and the way like it just weaves these words together, and I feel like there's always just so much to still like feel into deeper and learn more. And I absolutely love reading a way of like her way of storytelling. And yeah, I just love the storytelling and the connection to all um, woven like this. And yeah, I don't know, there is a synchronicity between this land and this book. So I'm curious to see what that is.
Hello, everyone. I'm Melody. Hola. Hello, Ariel. It's been a few months. What do I want to say? I've never finished the book. I've tried reading it, and actually now I can't find it. It's missing. It's probably in a bag somewhere. Um, And I've also tried listening to the audio because there's an audiobook. I find her voice soothing, so that's kind of nice. Um, but I think just because I have the privilege of like living on this land, I would love to like deepen my relationship to that. And this season is the first season that well, I guess that's not true, but it feels more mine. I'm growing tobacco like in the ground and I have like 40 plants. It's insane. Yeah, I don't know why. It just we were able to start from seed and we had so many and like we have 40 like 2 foot plants right now. They're gorgeous. And I go out there and I tend them and I sing to them or I'll play music for them and stuff. But I just love the idea of being able to like come into a better understanding of what it's like to be in reciprocity with the land and like for it to be my like very lived experience. Um, Also, as a side note, one of my sheep died just a couple of like 2 or 3 days ago, and I had to rush back to the ranch to tend to her and to bury her, give her a funeral. And it really made me think about concepts versus like lived experience, and I've done a lot of reading growing up about like animal being our kin and like the plant kingdom being our kin and like kinship. But I think now I really, really like have it in my bones, what it is to like be in kinship and to care for something in that way. And so I'm hoping, well, I'm not hoping because I know that every time we gather like this, it's transformative. So I'm just really excited to see like what comes from gathering and reading the book. So that's why I'm here.
Hello. Melody, I'm really excited. I want to follow your tobacco journey. I'm so into it already. I'm there with you. I wanted to hop on because I really resonated with Melody's share about kinship. I really have a kinship with animals and plants since I'm a child. I hear them talk to me, and that's how I learned to care from them, from their leadership, not from what I think as a human I know better. Um, I've actually never read this book. Countless people have tried to tell me to read the book, or people have assumed I've read the book from the way I lead my life. And so I'm just very curious because this book keeps coming up in my field for 10 years now, and I've never read it. So I'm just here to receive whatever is alive in the moment.
Mark, I think everyone shared. I don't know if you want to take the opportunity.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Let me adjust this. Can you hear me okay? Colin from Chicago. This book has just blown my mind. I love this book. It resonates with me deeply. Um, it is a marker of how one should revere nature. Um, from, I think, a spiritual value standpoint. And it's so refreshing to hear, as you know, here in America, we live in such a capitalistic society and nature is treated as a commodity. And that native wisdom was just really refreshing, and every fiber in my body said, "Yes, yes, this is how we should be interacting with nature and knowing we're all part of one holistic system." And we need to be stewards of it, and we are just not doing a good enough job at the moment. So I've bought this book for many people in my life already, just because how strongly it's resonated and how refreshing it is. I bought it for my kids, and I just think all of our politicians need to read this book and learn the lessons that are there and live this way. So I find it, as a roadmap to how one should live and steward and relate. And so I was curious, or very happy to see that you were doing this study on the book. And so I'm here just to learn a little more about what your intentions are with diving deeper into the book and its wisdom.
I love it. Wow, thank you and welcome everyone. Yeah, excited to dive in as well. It's funny, I think my mom is gonna be joining us as well, and so I'm excited to have just a little disclosure, like it's all family here, like literally. And so for some of us I know very well, we've been in other book studies before, and some of us, this is probably like the first, introduction and time, and so I'm excited to see what's forming, like a lot of these cohorts and a lot of these journeys. It's like there's something in the field of like we need to read this and this is the perfect time, and just following that breath. But it's a really beautiful thing to witness, the constellation at work. And so thank you for being a part of this, and yeah, I'm excited for September 11th to come through, and we begin this beautiful journey together. So let me go ahead and shift over to explaining just a little bit of what we'll be talking about and kind of the foundations here. And I want to begin with this interesting story of, the first time that I read this book was in New York, and I was completely shocked by the contrast of what this book was and what I was witnessing and seeing. And this was probably over a decade ago, and I was living, in really the suburbs of New York, New York City, and there was a berry tree that I would pass regularly. And during the summer, I'd noticed that this tree would drop berries everywhere. And the squirrels would come, and there was like a whole activity that was happening, Birds would come, raccoons, and it became like almost like a pivotal place in some ways of like birds' nests. And there was, I don't know, I found something so magical within a big this metropolitan city, to see something, even if it's rodents, like see them enjoy themselves in the summertime. It was just like a nice little world that they had. And around the same time, I was listening to Braiding Sweetgrass, and then one day in my audiobook, I was walking along, and then I see that this tree was completely cut down, chopped. And I later learned that it had been cut down because it wasn't because, oh, it was obstructing something, or it was sick, or it was, there was like a hazard or anything. I learned that it had been cut down because the berries were falling onto the driveway of the car, and they were annoying to clean up. And this really stayed with me of like, how? Like it's a mess for one person for 2 months. It's just 2 months. But it's a whole food system, and it's a whole ecosystem to so many other beings. And I think this is one of, and I mean, it really stuck with me because literally I can't make this up. Like I'm listening to Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I'm passing alongside, about to see this tree, and you can imagine the shock of it being completely cut down. I was pissed. I was livid. I had like a whole moment of just like, what the fuck? And it's great that it's New York, and like, we can kind of do this, but like, it's just like, what is this? And, I put down cacao, I put down flowers for it, and I'm just like, God, I'm so sorry for our ignorance. And it really stuck with me. And I think this is one of the questions that I've continued to like live through in so many ways, of like, How can we live really surrounded by nature, even in the city, and still be so separate from like the relationships that are happening within that ecosystem? And so this is where I really want to begin this conversation, and like, because it doesn't really matter. I know all of us are going to be reading this book, whether it's in Guatemala Highlands, where you go and it's like we're surrounded by an ecosystem. There's like scorpions in my bed sometimes. I'm surrounded by like this natural like tangibleness of like there's something a lot bigger than just myself. And then for some of us, we're going to be living in places like Chicago, or places like the cities or suburbs, or I know Gabriele is in Geneva right now, right? And so there's a whole ton of different ecosystems that we're all going to be living amongst. And so regardless of where we are, it's the question still remains of like how how can we be in conversation and in participation with the larger ecosystem that surrounds us? How can we be in kinship? How can we be in stewardship? How can we take care of the things that are around? And first and foremost is how can we actually see and witness, you know, um, the living world apart from our own human experience? It's these are kind of the foundational questions that I have. Because if we can't see something, then we can't love it, and then we can't care for it. And so really this is just about opening our eyes. And I think Robin Wall Kimmerer does that so, so, so well. And this brings me to, another pillar that we will go into is this aspect of ecopsychology. And ecopsychology gives us a way of thinking about this particular separation. Human beings develop in relationship with cycles of light, with cycles of seasons, with weather, with plants, with animals, with fire, with water, with all of these communal forms of life. Our bodies actually, our senses perceive the world within these relationships. I think this is one of the first generations within these last 100 years that we have felt this fragmentation so much. So I know for a lot of us, within our genetic makeup, this is something that is there's a conflict that arises within this, because our attention is constantly being pulled outward, right? Imagine like how like our my grandmother did not have a phone when she was in her 30s. Our grandparents didn't have all of these communication devices, but that are constantly taking our attention in some ways. And so at the same time, I think this attention is really interesting to take a look at. What is being called towards your attention? Is it a plant? Is it a bird? Or is it Instagram, TikTok reels? Like there's something there for us to really converge and communicate as well within this fragmentation. And I wanted to bring this in because, in this is something that we can see within the language of how we're talking about certain things. Language is very limiting in our English dictionary, right? But it's we can see it within the world as like the earth is becoming a resource. We have property, we have, right now they're in Guatemala, like, it's like people are selling land and it's like, oh, the scenery is so beautiful. And so these like tiny little words that might mean, something to us, like at the same time, there's an invitation there to really sense like how separate are we just by the words that we use. And I wanted to put this in because ecopsychology, asks us to consider what this separation actually does to the psyche, to our senses of belonging, and more than anything to like our capacity for relating to life. And this is what we're experiencing now again. It's in a lot of ways like this return to ritual, this return to ancestral practices, this return to like pilgrimages, even, earth-based healing. It's a longing to participate within the living world again. And it's interesting because like again, language is so fascinating. The separation between human and nature, it's also something very new and something within our language in English. Because human in other ways, for example, in the Mayan Caxiquel, it's Hunwinak. It's a completely different concept of what a human is. Hunwinak means like you're completely in your totality of a being that is now in service to life. It's the same in the Mexicasteca, in Nahuatl, Masawal. Masawal means like the ones who are deserving, the ones who are in service to life. And we'll talk about this in just a little bit. And I'm bringing this in just to contrast, like, and to really study like how, and I've been doing this myself, like how fragmented am I? How am I also in this participation, in this agreement of this language? And this goes to show like in many indigenous cosmologies, we begin from a very different understanding of relationship. And I think to contrast, within like the dominant, Western frameworks, and I have a teacher who's an eco-psychologist, and he's like, let's talk about the cocktail, the patriarchal, colonialistic, capitalistic, dominant society. Nature has often been in this like weird category, right? It's like we see it as utility, like there's a utility towards it. There's ownership, there's production, there's resource extraction, right? We can see this now with the water that's happening here. And humans become this like primary subjects. Everything revolves around humans. Again, the berry tree that was cut down, everything revolves around like, oh, it's inconvenient to have this tree. And so this living world becomes the object that is around us. And it's a framework of the mind. And so in comparison across, and I'm putting this in here as a framework because we're going to be talking about indigenous wisdom. And we'll go into it more within our study next month, but in many indigenous cosmologies, and very close to my heart is like the traditions within Mesoamerica. Humans are understood as participants within a much larger living system of relationships. And we're in service to life. We're in service to earth, to rivers, to the mountains. We're in service to it, right? And I think in some ways we can even see this in the language of like psychedelics right now, like the oh, I want to heal so much. And like with the mushrooms, for example, I had this like it's a short story, but like this one friend and I were conversing, and it was like, oh, I've been taking mushrooms, and even just that language, and it's been showing me all of these things. But it's like there's a shift in someone's question, and I can't remember, this was a while back, but it said, but are you in service to the mushrooms as well? Like, what are the mushrooms asking you for? Like, what is this agreement, this relationship? Because it doesn't go just one way. Like, heal me, heal me, heal me, heal me, take me, take me. There's another way of like for example, like I know for a fact as an archaeologist, like the amount of mushrooms that people have taken in order to make temples in the ways that they have, with like the studies of the stars, like that's microdosing, man. Like I know that would be so like like I even want to do this of observing the stars and its celestial points and then just being like, oh, this is where we make the temple. Like there's a relationship that is then in service to something bigger in the ecosystem, right? I know for cacao, this is definitely something that we see in the temples. And so this goes to show, like, this changes the position of the human, right? If the world is around us and it's all alive and it's all breathing, then our knowledge, our wisdom can't only come from observing it from the outside. It comes from, as Melody was saying, of like feeling it and living it and having it within the marrow of our bones, right? It develops through participation, it develops through sensing, it develops through really living it, really caring for it. And I think for a lot of us, like, that's something that comes from the fragment itself of like, we're not allowed to care all that much, right? Because life is, this is part of life, Or like how many of us have been through our childhood and have been like severed of that care. I know for a fact that every one of us has cried because, we've seen like a puppy in like distress, or we've seen, like the homeless in our childhood, and we can't bear it. And I think for us, that's again, that's something that through our the development of our adult life, and this is something I talk about with Tata Jericho, you know, this is an important part of the human development in indigenous cosmovisions, is whatever it is that you care for so much that you're like, your heart's like begging to assist, that's a mission. And I think for a lot of us, this is like severed in the Western world. And so this is all to just place like a couple of ideas and questions within your heart. Because this is something as well that we're going to be talking about in Braiding Sweetgrass, because it becomes like a much more important text, right? It's a map. And so I want to introduce you to Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's an amazing botanist, and she's an enrolled citizen of the Potawatomi Nation. But what I think makes Braiding Sweetgrass so important for this study is the way that she brings different ways of knowing into conversation. And I know Gabrielle is like studying this thoroughly, and she has an amazing research that's happening within that. If you want to know more, but Robin, she writes through this like botanical science and ecological observation and sensorial observation. And then she has the Potawatomi teachings and language. And it's all through like her own lived sensed experience. She's also a mother, a gardener, a teacher, and she has this deep relationship with the land. And so her worldview is this bridge, right? And I think this is one of the best teachers for us, because we need a little bit of both, and there's a passage that really, I was reading this last night again of just seeing the introduction, and it's a passage that she contrasts a Western hierarchy that really places humans again at the top and plants towards the bottom, right? And in contrast, she's like, we are actually the younger brothers of creation, and the plants have been here for way longer. And if you really think about it in geological time, like we're at the top surface level, we're at like the Anthropocene, right? In geological time, we're a blip in comparison to all of the plants and all of the animal kingdom and all of the mineral kingdom. And so we actually know nothing. The plants have been here, long, long, long time, right? Mushrooms, thousands, millions of years. Cacao, 12.5 million years. Just to put that into perspective of what we're drinking as well for our cacao lovers, right? And so this is something that, I love that her introduction is like that. We are the younger brothers of creation, and humans have less experience on how to live. And so we have a lot to learn. And I think this is humbling in so many ways. And to me, like, I find myself like in awe of that orientation. The questions change. For example, like, what might this specific plant know that I don't? What am I learning with this plant? What does she has to teach me? What is possible when we begin to approach the living world through this humility and actually become students again? And so I think this is one of the things that, for me and Tata Jericho, which is one of our wisdom keepers for this study for this 6 months, this is something we talk about a lot. A lot of our conversations together are this of like this this aspect of like of being so humble to learn about the world through the relationships that we may have with specifically plants, but it also goes towards rivers and mountains, and what do they have to teach us? And can we just, kneel before the feet of the elders, which, yes, there are humans that are elders, but also there are amazing plants. This is, for example, one of them. This is called a tsite. Say hello. These are like the red little beans that the Mayans used to do divination, right? And it's amazing. We also do divination with corn in Mexico. But in this it's like this like red little bean that they put out, and they ask and consult like what is happening with this person, right? And I have a friend, a dear good friend, who's been experimenting with this, and one of them grew. And now I get to be with this site tree, and guys, it talks. It's incredible. Like during the daytime, it the plants go up, and then during like around 6 7 p.m. it goes to sleep. And so it's really interesting because I have it here in my desk, and I'm a big night owl sometimes if I have like a lot of things on my work to-do list. But it without seeing the time, I'm seeing this plant instead, and it's showing me the circadian rhythms. I'm like, oh, Tsite is like going to sleep now. I need to wind down. I need to turn off the lights. I needed to put a candle on, like, and it's teaching me about my own circadian rhythms within here. And so it's like these like little things, right? And it's fun if we can observe them through the eyes of like a child again, right? And so and really like again as like the younger brothers, and I think it's you know kneeling at the feet of the plant kingdom is one of the most amazing things that we can do. And this teaches us how to become indigenous to a place. Robin talks, I love that. I'm now calling her Robin, as if she was like my good dear friend. Same with Clarissa. But Robin, she writes about what is to become indigenous to a place, right? And it's learning to really care for the land as though our lives and the lives of future generations depend upon it. And I love this phrase. Within one of the first what's it called, pages of this book, right? And I want to study this language very carefully because Abuela Chicahuasochil, one of my teachers in the Mexicayo tradition, in the Mexica Azteca tradition, she says to be indigenous has nothing to do with the color of your skin, the color of your hair, the color of your eyes. It has everything to do if you can talk to the generators of life. The water, the air, the fire, the wind. It has everything to do with that. How are you communicating to the living world around you? And so it restores a little bit about, like, again, becoming indigenous. And for Robin, becoming indigenous to a place, um, it carries like this, what she calls, like, there's no restoration without restoration. And so to know the plants that are living around you, to know the waters, to know the seasons, this is permaculture 101, right? But I mean, permaculture is a whole other study, and it's westernized now, but like in indigenous wisdom and knowledge, you study the place for about a year, just to see how things are moving, and what flowers, and then what comes next, and what birds come, and then it shows you something differently. Like, for example, Tataririco, the last time we talked, he was like, oh, those like yellow butterflies are coming, and that shows us that the cornflowers are about to emerge, and so we have to prepare. There's certain signals that the living world tells us, and so it's becoming indigenous to that, of what is returning, what needs care, what's coming, and there's a feminine aspect to this, and then there's a masculine aspect to this as well. The feminine, of course, like, we're sensing and we're intuitive about it, we're watching, we're feeling, and then the masculine aspect is we're tracking it. How do you guys think that all of the calendrical systems that we've been using have come into form? It's through this observation. It's through using both of these these parts of us, and really fine-tuning them. It's like, I find it like, if I become like a sensei or like a Jedi to this, of like, it's a mastery, it's something, it's like kung fu. We have to be in practice to it every single day. This is where our devotion comes in, but it's really just, it's a living practice. It's being, it's becoming, sometimes we don't even have to. I think after a while, like, that sense of like, I'm in devotion right now, and like, it's spiritual, and it's like, it's actually, we just become what it is. And so I think this is a really beautiful place to also start as a pillar, right, of the restoration of the land that you're living in. What is do you know the language of the place that you're living in? And it's, do you know, like, the native plants, and not just by the name, but by the ecosystem that it lives within? For example, like, just the berry tree that was cut down, like, I still have no idea what it's called, but I had a name for it, but I knew the ecosystem, and I knew that, like, once every year for 2 months, it just plops out all of these berries for all of these beings, and it's a feast, right? So it's more about that. And then we get to learn a little bit about, like, the indigenous language, yes, and like the scientific language, and like all this inquiry. But I think there's like a feminine approach first that is really beautiful. And then we get into, okay, how do we track it? How do we name it? What is it called? Sometimes I think the ways that we've been taught is first this, then that, right? Just as a heads up for all of our womb carriers here, there's a really cool Womb in the Grave class or cohort that's coming up in late September, probably October, that we're going to be talking about this and actually doing this within our own ecosystem of tracking our cycles in that way within the Mayan Chorkij calendar. Just putting it out there for you guys, because this is indigenous science that we're going to be going into. And so, for this is really the pillar of first of what we do here at Passages. This is the pathway to nature literacy, which is the cultivation of our capacity to perceive relationships within the living world. right? Literacy meaning how to read, but this applies to not just a book, this applies to language of the living world. And so how can I walk into a landscape, and this is really something that I I'm inviting to formulate within your, regardless if you do this study or not with us, but it's an invitation to really learn, like almost as if it was like a permaculture practice. But if we can fine attune this study, then you can walk into any language, any landscape, and begin to perceive what's happening. It's having these different set of eyes, right? How cool would it be to like travel and be like, oh, this is, to almost like sense it all of like what's speaking, what is, you know, um, to really know how to study it, to really know the language of it, to be literate in this, of how, what is flowering, what's disappearing, what's arriving with the rains, who eats this fruit, what grows besides that, what happens if a species is removed, how is the ecosystem changing, right? What is the disturbance of the season, and second to that, is the feminine aspect of like, what is my relationship to all of this? Because for thousands of years, humans have been really oriented through the living world, the stars, the winds. There's 4 different types of winds, actually 6. Are we able to recognize this? The migration patterns of birds, the water cycles. Are you in rainy season? Is it a little bit, behind right now? How is it affecting the landscape? What can I do to now be in that ecological framework? It's to be attentiveness to the living world. And it centers the human as a caretaker, exactly as Mark was saying, like a steward, right? This is a pathway to stewardship. And so it's, again, today we're fragmented. We have our attentions are here. Our attention is, I don't know, mostly here for me. Or Netflix. It's this, and it's fine. It's like having a nice balance, but like it's there's a different way. There's artificial environments, there's schedules. I know in the West that there's so much that's changing within these conversations, and it's a system that's designed to compete for our perception. And I want to bring this like very in a way where like it's a it's a way to manipulate the mind. And it's a very, again, it's a colonial structure. And so we have to be very aware of that, right? And again, like the Kung Fu Ninja, like is this competing with the way that I'm able to perceive? Is this taking my power away? And I think this is where, like, again, nature literacy matters so much right now. Like, it asks us to cultivate that attention again and to become really sensitive enough to notice relationship and eventually understand what participation within those relationships asks of us. Again, like the mushrooms, it's like, okay, you're taking me, but now I'm asking you to build a whole temple so that people can pray. These are thoughts and theories of an archaeologist, but but again, it's a deeper question, and I think maybe for these next 6 months, it's going to be really, really fun. What can we perceive now that we couldn't perceive before? How are our eyes changing? And so with that, there's this beautiful invitation. Mark, I tell my kids our bodies are in antennas, yes. To receive the communications of spirit, we need to spend time polishing our antenna to hear these voices and wisdoms. It's just beautiful. It's an intentional practice in an environment where most of society is distracting us with non-spirit distractions. Yeah. I love this. I love that you tell your children this. This is beautiful. And it's exactly that, polishing the antennas, right? Hmm. And we can have this with so much. I mean, this applies, again, this is just a pathway. Like it's almost like this, it's a method. Nature literacy is a method. Because then you can apply it to everything. You can apply it to womb studies. You can apply it to dream studies, guys, dream studies with the nature literacy. It's amazing. You can apply it as well with like, what's it called? Intuition. It's like these like little things that are non-verbal, but you need to spend time, as Mark's saying, polishing the antenna to really listen, and then we can act upon it. And so the plant kingdom works in this way as well, and I think we're going to be talking a little bit about this too within specifically the Mayan cosmovision of like how plants actually come into our dreams. And so braiding sweetgrass is just the introduction, really. If this was a university, this would be like which I hope one day it will be. I think this would be really fun. But dreams. Um, if this was a university, this would be the required reading for nature literacy, which is a whole pathway that's coming next year, which is actually a 9-month container. So just to give you guys like a heads up that this is just like we're just touching the surface of like the iceberg, because this gives us like a framework and this gives us language, but really, and we'll do practices in all of this. However, this goes into a much bigger study that's coming. And so this is, again, the required reading, if you will, for passages. But it's six months that we'll be following this book. We'll be reading it together, and there'll be a lot of beautiful and different what's it called, practices that we'll be doing as well. And this is, between our gatherings, there'll be invitations for observations and, of course, relational practices within the place that you live. Everything is place-based. And, of course, we'll have our beautiful wisdom council within. And so I want to introduce to you Tata Jericho and Nana Jessica, who are Kiche Mayan wisdom keepers, that are teaching the sacred Cholquij calendar, and they work a lot with cacao. However, the Tajerico is just both of them. They're amazing humans who are so, those people that are so embodied. Actually, all of these, the Walter as well, Uncle Kirk. Oh my goodness. And so these are people that are living these practices in a way that I think for us who for the younger creators or younger creations, I think of me, I feel like I'm like a baby in all of this language still. And I'm finding people who are like the adolescent or adult version of this, the elders who are actually carrying this wisdom within their bones. And so for a lot of us, just looking at them live is enough to feel that resonance. And that happened to me with all of these. These are my mentors within this living world. And so sometimes we need the plant kingdom, and sometimes we need the human kingdom to really teach us through the language of our brains to like, oh, hey, yeah, this is what you're, we're confirming this, for example, right? And so excited to have these elders within us, within our container. And Tata Walter is another one. He's a Tzutujil Ajkij, from San Juan La Laguna in Sololá. So he'll be talking through this 6 months as well. Uncle Kirk, who's my Dene elder, and just his voice. I know some of you have heard him already. Just his voice, the way that it's so clear and so profound. And sometimes I feel like we need real elders, and Uncle Kirk is definitely one of those. I think he's around 74, and just the what he's walked. Again, there's some things that we just need to have a little bit more wisdom through lived experience, and what Uncle Kirk has walked is profound. And so he'll be talking to us a little bit as well. And I'm thinking, just because we're having fun with this, I think I'd love to invite Nana Reina to this wisdom council as well. Just speaking out loud here and brainstorming with you guys. There's something I said previously about plants coming into our dreams that Nana Reina talks a lot about. And so I might invite her as well. So just so you know, this is, again, a breathing, living thing that is still being kind of like created in some ways, and I'm having fun with this. But I just want you to know that this is our wisdom council, and that perhaps there might be like two more of our beautiful elders that are coming in, or collaborations and co-weavings, because I think this book, it's one thing to read it, and I think it's one thing to read it alone, but then it's another thing to have community, and then it's another to have wisdom counsel to actually assist us in what we're living, and the aperture that we're having. And so just want to let you know that I kind of want to play with braiding sweetgrass in our 6 months journey. And so this is basically what we're going to be diving towards and diving into head first, eyes wide open. And so there's an invitation here. This begins September 11th. It's going to be a 6-month community study, and we meet 2 Fridays a month at 11 a.m. Guatemalan time. However, whenever there is a wisdom keeper, then there's going to be a third community gathering, so that we can listen and then integrate slowly together. And so, yeah, this is basically the introduction of the foundations of this study, and there's a big invitation here for all of you, and my mom to join. I'm excited that she's joining as well. I think that'll be really interesting. See you, Mami. And so, yeah, there's a coupon. It's $66 a month. Or if you want to do the whole bundle, I think it's $395. However, I'm gonna put a coupon out for those who are interested, and if you bundle it with other people, I don't know, I just want to I know Gabrielle and Anna are potentially joining, and there's another one of you who live in Geneva as well.
Shannon.
Shannon, hi Shannon. And so already that's an ecosystem, right? That's a beautiful community that you guys will get to have the same language, and really study your ecosystem of plants, and seasons and all of this. And so that's just to say that if any of you want to also invite someone else within your proximity of your community, I think this is going to help, and there's a coupon for that as well. And so just wanted to put that out there, that it's not about the more the merrier. It's more about just how can you guys also have the opportunity to do this in camaraderie and really have a change of perception, because this opens, I mean, just the introduction alone opens up your perception. And so to have it with friends, and you can talk about it over coffee and cacao and just nerd out, that's a gift. And so just wanted to put that out there as well, that there's coupons for bundling with your ecosystem of friends and community. And so yeah, I think this is the foundations, and welcome to the study. And yeah, I just wanted to see if there's any questions, qualms, queries, regrets, concerns, doubts, anything that needs to be clarified. Passing the sweetgrass, or anything that's coming up as well, any shares. Okay, wonderful. I think it's all pretty clear, huh? Maddie, I don't know if you want to speak or if you're... Okay, amazing. Well, in that case, guys, I'm gonna, it's at the top, a little bit past the top of the hour, but just wanted to thank you all for joining. Um, Thank you so much for your interest and for your energy towards this. Hopefully, again, regardless if you join this study, join this program, whatever, hopefully this brings a much more awareness to the living systems that we're all placed in. Um, and the hope is that like this inspires you, regardless, to see this in a much more bigger way, to see ourselves as like the little ones, right? And Aleli talks about this, one of my teachers, of we are the little ones, they are the big ones, and to be cared for them in that way it brings a lot of like tears to my eyes. And so hopefully that perception changes a lot of how we care for our big ones, our elders, you know. And so sending so much love for you all, um, and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your Tuesday. Love you all. Bye, everyone.